And I want to welcome everybody back to our So You Want to Write a Spirituality webinar, part two, where we're talking all about the business of the book. Part one was about the writing of the book. We hope you were here. If not, it's recorded. It will be up on our YouTube page this week or next. Today, we're talking about the business of the book, which is an essential and consequential part of the process. I'm joined again by our esteemed panelists, Keely Boeving, Gary Jansen, and Vinita Wright. I'm going to jump right into it. So we're not going to even, maybe each of you can just say briefly who you're associated with, and then we'll jump right into our questions. So Keely, why don't you go first?
Sure. Yep. I'm Keely Boeving, and I'm a literary agent with WordServe Literary based in Denver.
Awesome. Thank you. Gary?
Hey, I'm the director of trade at Loyola Press and their executive editor and acquisitions editor.
Thank you. And Vinita?
I'm associated with myself. I'm retired from full-time editing, but I still do freelance editing. I still do some work for Loyola Press, which was my former employer. And I also am a spiritual director. So I have 2 or 3 vocations going on right now.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Vinita. It was a trick question for you, so you navigated it perfectly. All right, so let's get right into it. So we left off our conversation last week kind of at the end of discerning, what's a spirituality book? Why would we write it? What are some of the obstacles we have to overcome in our own writing and our own craft? And this week we want to get into, okay, now we have an idea, we have a manuscript. What do we do with it? So one of the questions that I know kind of came up in some of the conversations I had offline between this week and last was essentially, what's the value of a traditional publisher? And why not self-publish, right? You finish this great manuscript and then you say, I just want to get this out in the world. And that's certainly an option. But we have some folks here who represent traditional publishers. We have folks here who are probably used to pitching to traditional publishers. So let's kind of tackle that question first. Keely, can you kind of come at that from your perspective as an agent? Why engage traditional publishers?
Yeah. I think there's definitely a place for self-publishing. It kind of depends what your goals are for your book. If this is something that's just a passion project that you want to have for your kids, or need a small number of copies for a certain reason, self-publishing can make sense. But if you want broader distribution, if you want placement in bookstores, if you want an editorial team behind you helping to shape the manuscript, and if you want marketing and publicity beyond what you yourself can provide, then you really do need a traditional publisher for that.
Keely, can you talk a little bit more about something as simple as positioning in a bookstore? Like why? Because when you're sitting in your office, you're writing your awesome idea. You're like, doesn't matter where in the bookstore it goes. Just get me in the world. What is that kind of? What clicks into your brain when you're thinking in that direction?
Do you mean like positioning in terms of where in the bookstore, or just like getting into a bookstore?
Both and.
Yeah, well, category is definitely important. You want people to be able to find your book. And so figuring out what you're writing, where it should be shelved, what BISAC code it should have is critical. And that's something that a publishing house can bring some experience and weigh in on. And then just in terms of getting into bookstores, that requires a distributor. And it's very difficult for self-published books to get picked up by retailers.
Gary, I know you were in a bookstore this weekend. You were signing copies of your latest book that you obviously represent a traditional publisher, but you also were literally there because your book was represented by that publisher. So what talk to us a little bit about both being on the publishing side, why you think traditional publishing matters, and I'm not trying to lambast independent or self-published books at all. So maybe we can also talk about the more the advantages there. But then Gary, maybe you can also talk about the ability to then go into a bookstore and sign it, and what that did for your own kind of ability to sell the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love self-publishing, and I've met a lot of folks and read a lot of like self-published books over the years, and some of them can be fantastic, others not so great. But in terms of so anyway, I have a lot of respect actually for people who want to go out there and self-publish. But in terms of like a traditional publisher, I mean, it's like you get a team of people, who are there to help support you, right? They believe in the reason why they acquire the book is because they believe in the book. And so you're getting an editorial team. You're getting, I would say, in the majority of traditional publishing houses, you're getting an editorial team, you're getting a marketing team, you're getting a publicity team. You have people in customer service, you have people in sales, you have people in inventory control. You have this whole like group of people that are behind the scenes, oftentimes, that are supporting your book, right? So there's a lot you don't have to worry about when you go through a traditional publisher, or when you're lucky enough, because I really do think that publishing is a privilege, and right, and so it's not something that happens very easily. I mean, it's that's why so many people do go off and self-publish. But publishing really is a privilege. And if you have a book out there, it's a privilege. And when books get out there, they become part of the historical record. So for me, like books themselves, a lot of people, have friends who just like disregard books, they don't read, whatever. But you know what? That's an important, like if you have a book that's published, it's part of the historical record. It goes into the Library of Congress, right? It's in libraries, it can be in stores. People are sharing it, they're thinking about it, they're spending time with it. Super important. But that idea of the team that you have, and so many people that are behind the scenes that are, helping you get published, is really, really important. And yes, and so, I have great support from my publisher, Loyola Press, and, they were able to work it out so that I could do a signing at a local Barnes and Noble. And that's fantastic because you never know like if people are going to show up at these things or not. It's always a little nerve-wracking, you know what, but the marketing team, the sales team, they do what they can to work with the bookstore to hopefully it's a good event. And it was a good event. We actually sold, I think we sold it. We sold out of all the copies. I think there were left, and then someone came by who missed it and they bought the last 2 copies. So having that opportunity, now that doesn't always happen in terms of getting into a bookstore to do signings. They've become fewer and far between, like over the last like 10 years. That's really come down a lot for a lot of different reasons. But just having, again, coming back to this idea of having a team that support you and has the contacts and the know-how to get to people is really important in traditional publishing.
Awesome. Thank you. Vinita, I know you've published with numerous publishers. So I wonder again, from your perspective, what has been the value add in and also maybe the difficulty, the obstacles in publishing with traditional publishers? Because I think there's also hurdles to leap over there that you have to clear if you're self-publishing or maybe with an independent publisher.
Yeah. Well, everything that's been said already, you've got people who are supporting you. But another thing you need to keep in mind, and I'm kind of treading into another question area here, is that when you sign a publishing contract, you become a collaborator. And the publishing company is the one putting up all the money. I don't know what the figures are now, but it used to be like a minimum of 10 grand, operating costs and all of that. When Gary's saying it's much higher now. Well, that's 10 grand I don't have, there's no way I could do that. And also you have people who are collaborating with you to help you make this the best book it can be. Now, without being proud, I can say I'm a good writer. I've been a good writer for many years. Even in college, I was a good writer. However, every writer has her blind spots. And you have to have someone outside of yourself to look at what you've done and to give you feedback. You may be a super gifted writer who doesn't need that, but I've never met one of those. I just haven't. And I've met a lot of really good writers. And I'll give one example to make my point. I wrote The Soul Tells a Story. It was about the creative process and spirituality. I wrote this more than 20 years ago for InterVarsity Press. And we went through the editing process. I did a lot of work on it. I had a really good editor. She sent it back to me close to the time when it was going to be, I don't think it was that far from going to the printer or, to proofreading or whatever. It was not in Pages yet. So she sent it back with this message. She says, this is all really good, but we need your story in here. Well, essentially that meant that I needed to very quickly go through every chapter and add a personal story of mine. how this related to my life. As it happened, we were on a vacation we'd planned for a long time out on Kelly's Island off the coast of Ohio, little island, no internet except for the library. And between taking walks in the woods with my husband, I'm feverishly trying to write all this extra material to meet the publishing deadline. And I realized that, okay, she's the editor. She knows what she's talking about. I can see her point. I don't want this to be about me, though. See, that's what I said. I don't want this to be about me. But I thought, trust your editor, Vinita. You've been doing this a long time. You ask people to trust you, so you need to trust your editor. So I did it, went down to the library, sent the file. And that's probably the best decision we could have made for that book. When I read it later, I realized, you know what? That was the missing piece. That was the missing piece. It made it a really good book. So sometimes that collaboration can be kind of hard. I was in another situation where I finally had to, by mutual agreement, we canceled the contract. This is a publisher I will not name. Because the editor just did not understand what the book was trying to do, and she over edited. I mean, it was a nightmare, and I could tell that she was not going to change, and I was not going to let somebody completely rewrite my book. And so that was a bad situation. I canceled the contract, and that book has yet to be published anywhere. So there are good parts of it. The main part, though, is what the others were saying. You've got this support. You got people doing the work that you don't do. I've always worked full time. I didn't have time to go out and do publicity and all the things that a publicity or marketing team would do. So there are good parts of it. Sometimes it's hard, but you have to go into it with the idea that I'm collaborating here. This isn't just my book anymore. I'm not the only one with skin in the game here. And I think sometimes authors don't realize that when they enter an agreement, they still think, well, this is my book and I should do it the way I want to do it. Well, not really, once you're in that publishing relationship.
That's super helpful, Vinita. And I want to say, and I'm going to invite all three of you to correct me if I go awry. We've each talked about kind of the team of people that are involved in publishing. So just to kind of give folks the scope, right? It's obviously you, the author, and any of your friends and family who read early manuscripts. If you have an agent, it's going to be the agent is going to kind of walk you through that process. Then there's the acquisitions editor, right? Gary, you're for Loyola. And then the acquisitions editor has to pitch that book to the larger team involving marketing and all sorts of other kind of stakeholders in publishing. And then once you have a contract, you're going to be working with not just the acquisitions editor, but various editors that are going to give big picture edits, micro edits. And then there's a whole marketing and publicity team, which consists of people that are going to be running the website and all sorts of other setting up events, designing the cover, right? All these different things. Are there any other key stakeholders that I'm missing in this description? Because this is a big team, a lot of people. Some teams are one person, some teams are 20 people. What am I missing, folks?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, you have your editors, your copy editors, your proofreaders, right? You have your marketing team, your publicity team. You have your publisher, right? The publisher who oversees everything. Super important because she or he is, kind of has a vision for the book, and you're following, what the publisher is saying. But you also have a design team, right? Who's working on. You may not interact with them, right? But they're designing your jacket, they're designing your interior pages. There's someone who has to actually do. And within that there are production managers, right? Who actually do the, they check to make sure there aren't any orphans at the end of a paragraph, or any runts, or making sure that when you break a line that it doesn't break the wrong way. And so there's that whole team. There's your legal team. There is your, again, customer service. There's your sales team, which is why publishing is always like a struggling industry, right? And that's for big publishers, small publishers, because they're not big ticket items books, right? So you're selling, if you have a book out there and it's $20, to buy, it might seem like, hey, that $20 is a lot of money, but it's not a Mercedes, it's not a Tesla, right? The margins are routinely horrible because you have all of those people who are involved in the process, and that doesn't include the printer, right? Or the printing costs, the insurance, all of these things. So at the end of the day, a publisher is making just a few dollars, on each book, which is great, which is why you want to be able to sell tens of thousands. But every Vinita said about 10,000, and that was kind of like a base, line in terms of like what are the costs, like, but that it's been a while since it's been like that. I would say it's tens plus tens plus tens of thousands of dollars just to like start like a book. And then you need to be able to sell enough copies to clear, just even to break even, right? That book. And so that's why publishing itself can just really, really be a challenge, and why so many people have gone to like self-publishing, because publishers themselves have to become very, very critical in terms of what they publish, how they publish it, who they can reach. Otherwise, they're going to go out of business.
Yeah. And I mean, even like you said, like yeah, no, the margins are tight. I want to, Keely, I have a question for you on kind of building off of this topic. I think this is like super helpful behind the scenes stuff. And I do see questions in the chat, so we'll get to those. But Keely, when you're working with an author and you're trying to pair that author with a publisher, you're pitching to a particular publisher, what goes into the strategy behind that? And can you also kind of talk to us about not just the traditional publishers, but do you ever consider independent publishers or anything in that area when you're making this match?
Yeah, excuse me. I would say it's, it varies for each project. So I'm thinking about, what is the size of the author's platform? Are they a debut author? Do they have a track record? Are we trying to break them out to a big 5 house, or are we trying to just get them, get their foot in the door and get their first book published? And then thinking about, who are the audiences that different publishers serve? Even within Christian publishing, you have some houses that are catering more to Catholic readers, evangelicals, more mainline Protestants. So just trying to find the right match in terms of who are the readers you want to reach, and then who are the editors that I feel like are really going to resonate with this project. So that's an advantage of having an agent, is having someone come in who knows the industry, has relationships, knows what different editors are looking for, what they're going to get excited about, and kind of matching you with somebody who's going to be a good fit and a really good advocate for you. What was the second part of your question?
I think that was it. I don't know. Was there a second part, Gary? Vinita, do you remember second? I think you nailed it, Keely. Whatever it was, I think you answered it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I want to kind of flip the question for Gary and Vinita, though. As authors, right, folks who have written several books, what have you looked for in publishers as you've kind of gone out? How have you made that decision if multiple offers were made? Gary, you can go first. Or
Okay. Sure. Yeah, I think it's, so much of it comes down to relationship. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to like work in the industry for a long time, so I know, certain editors or publishers and stuff like that. So making sure like what I'm doing is resonating with the publisher. So a lot of it has to do with like doing your homework, like what are you trying to accomplish? I'd been published at Penguin Random House and Hachette, but the attention that I got at Loyola, at press, when I was working there as I was writing for them as a writer and as an author before I started working with them, was very impressive, right? So I got attention that I wasn't getting at the Big Five. And so for me, the Big Five was asking for another book, and I was just said, you know what, I just want to rethink this. And so I took my next project really to Loyola. So for me, it was and I like the folks at Loyola, and I like the publishing that we do together. And now it gets complicated because I work there now, so it's a little bit of a complicated thing there. But but that still holds true. And so for me, it was really, yeah, I've been fortunate enough, because I'm in the industry. It's difficult, I think, for folks out there who may not know, who don't have those contacts. But part of it is just kind of like doing research. What books out there are being published by publishers that you love? Can you see yourself as being part of that? I say dream big in the beginning, at least.
dream big in the beginning and then let your dreams slowly die and like
We'll let
wither
them
as time goes
slowly
on.
die.
Just kidding, just
No.
kidding. Sorry, we'll
But
cut that
dream
from the
big in
recording.
the beginning. Dream big in the beginning.
Vinita, how about you? What is your
Oh,
experience been, or what has your own reflection been?
Yeah, you just dream a different dream. That's all.
Yeah.
Well, I would want to work with a publisher that has a rigorous editorial process, because as a writer, I appreciate a good edit. And there's a time when I was still working at Loyola when I wrote a book for Loyola, and it was a little iffy, you know, farming my manuscript out to one of the editors. I'm thinking that's pressure they don't need. So we used one of our freelance editors, and I chose to have it sent to our toughest freelancer, because I thought I really, you know, because I want to grow as a writer. I want to get better and better and better. So I wanted to be sure that I always want to be sure that there's going to be a real editorial process, that they're not just going to have a copy editor to go through and fix the obvious errors, but not really interact with it and get back to me. So that's one thing. And I like it when a publisher seems to really know who they are. A couple of years ago, I I was approached by Ave Maria Press, the Catholic publisher, to do a book, a retreat book on the 4 female doctors of the church. It was totally their idea. And I said, I'm not an expert on these women. They said, you don't need to be. You just need to put on your spiritual director's hat. And I said, well, that I can do. That book has sold really well. I've gotten better royalties on that book than any other book I've done. That's because they knew their audience. They knew what they wanted to do. And I fit the bill for them. You know, I had the right gifts to write that book. And now I'm working on another one in that same kind of vein. So you want to know that they know who they are. See, Loyola Press, it took a while for Loyola Press to figure out that, you know, we have Jesuit roots, you know, there's Ignatian spirituality that we need to mine. And so a lot of our good books in the past 20 years have been in that realm. Now, the marketplace is changing, and the industry has to change along with it. So it may not be the same kind of focus right now. But, you know, a company that knows who they are and they know who their audience is, that means a lot, because that means the marketing will actually work. And if they choose you, it's important to know, well, why did you choose me? Because I'm not Catholic, I'm Episcopalian, you know, and they know that. But they were able to match their need with a skill set that I had. So you know, for a person just starting out, there's just a lot of research. You know, you read, you look at their website, you see what kind of books they have out, you see if you're a fit there, and if you have any kind of inside relationship, if you know anybody in the industry, you know, pick their brain for, what do you know about this publisher? You know, do you know about do they have a good editorial department? Do they? Some of it you just can't find out ahead of time, but I would try at least that much.
Thank you. So two points I want to kind of underline that all of you have said is there's a real need to know your goals, both whether you're the publisher or whether you're the writer. What are your own personal writing goals? That should dictate where your book goes and why. And then also, if you're a publisher, what are the publisher's goals? You know, the mission of the publisher, and that helps to align things. And I think that's really important in spiritual writing, particularly, but certainly in any sort of writing. We have a question about author platform, and I think this is a good time to tackle it, because kind of you know, you don't build your author platform after you've submitted your book proposal, right? That's something you should be doing while you're before or as you're writing the book, of course. So maybe we can start, Keely, again. I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep starting with you, but from your kind of agent hat, as you're assessing a writer, or as you're encouraging a writer as they're in the early stages of a book draft or whatever it might be, what do you tell them about the importance of author platform? What is it? And then how important is it ultimately when you're trying to get the book sold?
Yeah, just to kind of follow up on what you've said, platform is something that you need to be building before you're seeking out an agent, before you're seeking out a publisher. I have people who come to me and say, you know, once I get a book contract, then I'll do such and such. It's impossible to get a book contract if you don't have the platform already. you can be building it, and of course it will grow once you have a book. But it has to be something that you've started. So
And what does that mean, Keely? What does it look like? What are the actual pieces of it?
yeah, there are a ton of different pieces that go into platform. I would say the central component from my perspective is your email list. Publishers always ask, how large is your email list? And that's something that you can be building through a newsletter, through lead magnets or downloadable things on your website, through speaking events where you're asking people just to sign up for your email list, stay up to date on what you're speaking about, what you're writing on. It's also made up of your body of work. So if you have bylines in other online outlets, especially writing you're doing that is in the same vein and reaching the same reader that you want your book to reach. Speaking events, which can be virtual, in person, they can be, small. I tell people, like, start at your local MOPS group or your church, or do a school visit, but starting to build up speaking events just to have those on your resume. And then it's also made up of your network. So, influencers and other writers and thought leaders in the space that you're in, organizational affiliations, places that you can count on to make bulk purchases of the book. Really, it's just sort of the amalgam of everything you can present to a publisher to say, this is how people are going to find me. This is how they're going to find my book.
Awesome. Thank you, Keely. Gary, as someone who acquires books, how do you, what kind of piques your interest from an author's platform?
Yeah, so I mean, it's multifold. I mean, so much of it, part of it depends on the project itself. So platform is super important, very important. I wish it wasn't as important, but it really is, because there's plenty of submissions that we get in, which are excellent, but the person has zero platform. And so, if you have to choose between a book that's excellent with a zero platform or one that's great and has a good platform, you go with the one that's great. Just because that platform helps to sell product. And the biggest challenge, with publishing is that there are thousands and thousands of books that are published every year. And there's so much competition for just space at Barnes and Noble, space on Instagram, space in terms of advertising, and getting people's attention. So how do you rise above the din? And so if you have a loyal following, if you have an email list, if you have a business, if you have funds, right? If you have money and you can do your own advertising or do whatever, or reach out to folks and broker deals where you can do bulk purchases and all of that stuff. It's really important. So I think for me, it's always kind of like, what's the product? Like what's the book and what's the idea? That's the first thing that drives me. Second thing, I will look at platform. I know it because I've spent most of my career taking people maybe who would never have a shot at getting published and then publishing them, and more often than not doing okay with it, right? And even if the platform is kind of small. That being said, platform is super tough. 90% of all books are rejected. If they're rejected and they're good, it's because they don't have a platform. But for me, it's kind of like looking at what the product is, and then looking at, it's so tough to say. I think what Keely was saying about mailing lists, that's really important. You could have 3 million Instagram followers, but if you start doing the math on it, that may only translate to 3,000 books to be sold, right? If you start really kind of there's an algorithm that you can just kind of do, because, you may have 3 million followers, but maybe only 10% of those people are going to buy books, or maybe are interested in hearing more from you. And then only 10% of that are going to buy, would even consider buying a book. And then at the end, only 10% actually do. So a lot of that can be smoke and mirrors in terms of social media presence. But the problem is just competition. You have so much competition out there. How do you get above the din, right? So if someone has a new idea, I think sometimes those new ideas can rise above the din, right? It means more publicity, more marketing, more effort on the publisher's part. So a bunch of different things, but that's it for me. And we've done well, publishing people who have sometimes really small platforms.
I want to go to another question, Vinita. I want to get your take first. What as kind of we've talked a little bit about the author platform, but I want to branch out and talk more about what makes a good book proposal, what goes into it, kind of what's like what gives it a real like depth. So Vinita, you've obviously written several books. You've been on the receiving end of these. From your perspective, what goes into a strong book proposal, and what should folks be kind of reflecting on as their ideas are germinating?
Hmm. Well, the book proposal needs to speak to, in many cases, something that's already out in the ether. You know, people are already thinking about this issue. In that way, those of us who communicate as writers, the reason we can't just live off in the woods and be secluded and happy with our pots of tea and our fire in the fireplace and our writing is that we have to be in touch with what in the world is going on out in society around us. And then you see, okay, what I know, what I have to write about, where does that connect with where real people are living? How can I connect that? And if it's a story about you, that's a whole other issue. Memoir is a whole other thing. I don't even want to try to talk about that today. But your proposal needs to make it clear that your material has a connection to larger issues, I think, so that when whoever's reading the proposal will say, oh yeah, people are hungry to hear this, or yeah, people really, you know, I hear people talk about this all the time. So you need to prove that you have something relevant to say. And you also, I'm sorry, you've got to be a really good writer. You know, your sample has to just jump off the page and grab the reader. I tell people, do not send your first chapters. Do not send your introductions, because those always suck. I'm sorry, they do. Eric, I may have told that to you when I edited you years ago. I
You
probably
cut my
said that
introduction.
yeah, I probably said that to Gary when I was working on his book. What we do as writers to get into the work is not what the reader needs to read to get into the work. So when you're sending something in a proposal, do not send your introduction. Do not even send your first chapter. Send a chapter further in where you're really in the groove now. You've gone over all the little humps you need to go over to get yourself into the topic. Now you're really talking about what you want to talk about. So avoid those beginnings, because they just don't work. They don't work until an editor is able to say, okay, this book really starts on page 10. I'm sorry, everything before page 10, nobody cares but you know. And you need to have a strong outline. I'm talking about nonfiction. Fiction's a whole other thing. But for nonfiction, you need to have a strong outline. Please work on your chapter titles. Those chapter titles are marketing ploys, okay? When I need to look at a table of contents and say, wow, if they can deliver on this TOC, I'm in. So don't just, you know, figure out in a linear way what you're going to say and then describe what you're going to say. Come up with really strong chapter titles, even if you haven't written the chapter yet. You know, that you need to sell it with the table of contents. Even online, when people buy books now, often like on Amazon and other platforms, you can open the book enough to see the TOC. That's marketing. That's marketing right there. So your TOC can help sell it to the publisher, along with really good writing. And it has to be relevant. There has to be what we used to call a felt need. In religious publishing, we always talk about, well, the world needs this book. Yeah, but the world doesn't want this book. This is a problem. I mean, honestly, people don't want to read a book about this, even though you may think they need it. But what does the world feel that it needs? You know, that's what we call a felt need. I don't know what it's called these days, but 20 years ago, that's what we called it. So what is the need? that's out there in the ether and that everybody knows, yeah, we need a book on this. We want to read about this. And then really good writing. Don't send them the beginning of the book because it's not going to work. And have a very intriguing table of contents. And please do not explain with 3 or 4 paragraphs what this book is. If you have to take 4 paragraphs to explain what it is, the publisher's going to say they don't even know what they're writing yet. You know, do not explain. Do not over explain. Just give them like a short, like a one short paragraph. This is what this book is about. And I mean short, 2-3 sentences, because the more you explain, the more they know that you are still figuring out yourself what it is you're writing. You know, we're very tuned into, this is an explainer. No, we're not even going to look at this because they're still wandering around in their own heads. So forgive me if I've sounded harsh, but I mean, that's the reality. And
I want to ask,
it's, yeah.
I do want to just remind you, Vinita, though, you loved my introduction to Station. The rest of the book you hated, but the introduction you.
Oh, you are full of it. You are full of it, Gary. No.
I think the book starts on page 10 is something you put in my original draft. Is like cut everything.
Maybe.
Wait, so Vinita, I do want to ask one serious.
That goes for me too. My husband's the one who, my fiction, he'll say you actually start on page 5. Oh. And I take his word for it.
I want to ask one follow-up, Vinita, because I do I want folks who are watching or listening, how much can the book evolve, right? You write those awesome, 10, 12 table, chapter titles, but then you've written 3/4 of the book and you're like, you know what? I've actually already answered chapter 7, and I really actually am feeling, the need here is to do chapter, 14 and 15.
Oh. That happens. In fact, if it doesn't happen, I worry.
Okay.
But that's also, you're in collaboration with an editor. Right. And so when you sign a contract, you and the publisher have basically the same vision of what this book is setting out to do. Everyone involved knows that what you turn in at the end is not going to be exactly what it looked like at the beginning, because every piece does evolve. What goes wrong is when sometimes you think you're writing this book, but actually it's a whole other book that you turn in. And that's a matter of a writer having the discipline to see that, whoops, I need to get back to what I was talking about here. But that's also what a good editor is for. I think every project evolves. It's rare that I've worked with someone that it turned out exactly the way the outline was. Yeah. Because the more they write, the more it opens up more issues, or they get feedback from a reader, from the editor or from some in-house reviewer. And they say, oh yeah, actually we need a whole chapter on that. So, it does change. It does change. So I'm not saying it has to be just cut and dried, but the publisher needs to see that you have a direction you're going in. You have some very significant things to say, and you've got a good handle on what this topic involves, enough that you can give them a really intriguing table of contents.
Nice. Keely, from your perspective, as again, someone who's working with authors on their proposals, even long before the publisher gets it, what are the key elements? What are the key stumbling blocks? How many pages in does the book actually start?
Yeah. No, I think Vinita did a great job kind of running down the basics. One thing I would say, in addition to really emphasizing that felt need, which is still the language that we use in our proposals, is also making a case for why there's space in the market for this book. So that's having comp titles, meaning both that you can point to books that are similar that have sold well, and also you can make a case that there isn't a book doing exactly what you're doing, that there's still a need to be met, that other books haven't met in this space. And then, I would say, the proposal functions as both sort of an example of your craft and as a business plan. So it really does need to show off your writing, both in the way you talk about and conceptualize the project, and then also in those sample chapters. And sometimes I do include introductions from some of my authors, but I would say the important thing there is our tendency is to want to explain why we are writing a book, and readers do not care. They want to know what this book can do for them. So take out that probably is the first 5 pages about how you
Yeah.
got here, why you're writing this. And instead you tell the reader, I know what you're dealing with. I've been there too. I have a plan for how we're going to get to the other side of this, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, and then in terms of a business proposal, that's kind of convincing publishers, okay, there's a wide audience for this. Maybe that's, you've got data or statistics on, whatever the topic is. And then again, platform, here's my reach, and here's how I plan to grow. Here's my marketing plan for once the book actually is out there. And then also talking a lot about your network and kind of the people around you who are going to be able to help you break the book out more widely. Yeah.
That's a good transition, because I want to kind of last formal question, and then I do want to give folks some time to just kind of ask questions of our panel. But let's circle back to marketing. There's been a few questions here about marketing. I know we kind of touched on it in different ways, but what does that actually look like? So that again, it's kind of happening all throughout, but it really, I think, and you guys can correct me if it's been my experience, that it really kicks into gear when you submit the first full draft to the publisher. That's when they start to go through different state, the real intensive marketing stuff. So what is, and Gary, I'm going to ask you this question. What is, and knowing that none of you here are kind of primarily marketing folks, but what is the responsibility of the author in marketing? What is the responsibility of the publisher in marketing? And how is that collaboration shared? Gary.
Yeah. So I think you just said it's a collaboration. And so I think, on the marketing side, depending who the publisher is, marketing, publicity work hand in hand, right? So if it's rare you just have a marketing meeting, right? You're having a marketing meeting with publicity. And marketing is really kind of, they're working with, they could be working, it could look like they're working with advertising, they're working with contacts, whether it be Kirkus or Publishers Review, in order to try to get the book out there to different, so they're setting up reviews, they are contacting influencers, they're trying to set up, they could be setting up bookstore events, right? So there's a whole marketing plan that goes on. I know there's a question in there, that do publishers not do marketing publicity anymore? Publicity would then be trying to get you interviews and all that stuff, and essentially, or is there some kind of event going on that you could attend or whatever? So kind of the publicity, the difference between marketing and publicity is, I feel like marketing's like an ad in a newspaper, trying to hype this book in a big way. And that publicity is really about you being somewhere, whether it's on TV or, doing an interview or doing, radio or whatever, a podcast. And so publishers absolutely do marketing and publicity. I think it comes back again to this challenge of there's so many thousands of books that are published every year. How does marketing publicity help you get above the din of all the noise that's out there, all the books that are being published? It's not just, Loyola Press isn't the only publishing house that's publishing Ignatian books, right? Ave Maria is publishing stuff. Ignatius could be publishing things like that. So, not only are you challenged in terms of what's out there in the marketplace, you're challenging, you're in competition with other publishers as well, just for that space. So kind of working hand in hand, what can you bring to the table, via your social media, your email list, your ideas for promotion, and then working with marketing publicity to try to make that happen. So again, it's a collaborative effect. And I do believe though that, publishers do look to authors, to have that platform, because that platform is going to help you, even if it's in the very beginning. Who are the people that love you, that engage with you, who know you, or the people that who can help get that above the din, because there is so much noise out there. So that's why it can feel like sometimes that the publishers are leaning on the authors. But if you're behind the scenes, then you actually, you see that the marketing and publicity are normally working their tails off to try and make a book succeed.
Absolutely. Vinita, any reflections on marketing, either from your experience of selling your own books or from kind of working in publishing?
Well, I think one thing that made me not a very good marketer of my own books is that, to a certain extent, you're marketing your book, but you must be willing to market yourself. In the end, I think people are are interested in you, the person who produced this book. I think it was it Louise Penny or Anne Cleves, one of my favorite authors, said that some other well-known author had come to her one day, and she said, well, I'm trying to figure out how to promote my book. This is the new author. And the older experienced author says, no, that's not what you're promoting. You're promoting yourself. That's what you have to promote. And self-promotion is hard for some of us. You know, we don't feel good getting out there and saying, hey, look at me, this is what I've done. So you have to get over some of that. And I am one of those people. I am well known in 2 or 3 small circles, and that's where my books sell. And I decided some time ago, you know, that's good enough. My books render a service within a certain kind of community. And those are the people, and the ones who buy the books really like the books. I always work full time, and often I was also doing freelance on top of it. I did not have the time or the energy after a 13, 14-hour day to then figure out a way to go out and promote myself. So that did hamper, you know, the sales of my books. I could not be. I mean, whenever they said, would you do an interview? I always said yes. Whatever they asked, I always said yes. I never said no. But in terms of getting out there on my own and really, you know, like I tried having a website, I wasn't real good at keeping that up. I mean, and I don't know if that's that important these days. I think other kinds of social media may work better. But there is this whole element of self-promotion that you have to make peace with. And you have to decide, okay, how important is it that I sell 20,000 of this book? Is a few thousand good enough for me? And is it good enough for my publisher? You know, what are my publisher's expectations? And how might I, you know, collaborate with them to make that work? But sometimes we have to kind of temper our expectations. We have to figure out, who am I, what am I offering, and who is hungering for what I'm offering? And how do I reach those people? And if I reach those people, how upset am I going to be that I don't reach another 40,000 people, that I only reach these people? So there are a lot of questions, and you know, by all means, if the publisher asks you to do something, just figure out a way to do it, because they are working hard. They're setting up interviews. They're doing a lot of hard work, and so just don't say no. Figure out a way to do it, and do it. But in addition to that, try to do better than I did at promoting yourself, you know, putting yourself out there, and, you know, put the false modesty away. I can say, hey, I wrote a really good book. I think people would like this.
I think it's really helpful. So, Keely, I'm gonna. So I invite folks to ask questions now. Either type in the Q&A box or in the chat. And while you're thinking of your questions, Keely, I'm going to toss to you kind of another version of this question we've been wrestling with. In addition to do better than Vinita at marketing, what would be the three? What three very tactile, low-hanging fruit type things would you say to folks on this call right now that they should go and start doing, like thinking about just after this call? Like what could they do to start building that marketing muscle and platform?
That's a good question. I would say you should have an author website for sure. Make it easy for people to find you online. When I get pitches from authors, the first thing I do is go and look at their website, look at their presence on social media, look if they're writing other places. So having a public-facing presence is important. I would also say a lot of it is so relational. So making contacts now with other writers, with people who are doing podcasts, with editors at, you know, online outlets, those things will all come back to benefit the book in the end. And publishers are doing a ton of work behind the scenes, but they often rely on authors because they have personal connections with people. So you're much more likely to get a response from a big podcast if you have been in touch with that host before, rather than they just get another email from Penguin Random House. And then again, I would go back to your email list. Whatever you can be doing to build that email list now, that'll be the marketing vehicle for selling your book down the road. There's the highest conversion rate between email subscribers and book purchasers, as opposed to other forms of social media or other platform
Yeah, I would underline the email thing, because I think folks are tempted to think, oh, email, that's old. Like, I get a bazillion of those a day. Who cares? But really, that's the mode of communication that gets you in front of somebody who has elected to listen to you, as opposed to
Mhm.
just kind of flowing by on a channels and feeds. So I know it's tempting to dismiss email. And again, I think a couple of examples were given here. Substack is something folks can use. That's a kind of an easy, free platform. Lisa asks, any thoughts on the trend of increasing audiobook consumption and how to take advantage of this new way of reading? I'll open it to the three of you. Whoever wants to answer, go for it.
Well, I think most publishers now are trying to release, at the same time, digital books, print books, and in many cases, audiobooks. It kind of depends on the genre, I think. I know more and more people, because just how many people have to drive so many hours a week. They fill up a lot of their driving time, commuting time with those books. A lot of people with vision problems, especially older people in my generation, the boomer generation, we're all getting cataract surgery, I'm serious. We're all so we're getting to love audiobooks as well. But that is up to the publisher. Generally, I mean, you can always ask, and that should be in the contract too. That should be part of what they're planning to do. But that's definitely a conversation you need to have with your publisher. And I think a lot of them are really trying to generate all of those types of platforms, at the same time.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I would say usually you can, have that. We try to push in the contract to have it stipulated that there will be an audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you want to request that those rights can revert back to you
Yeah.
if the publisher does not license them to have an
Mm-hmm.
audiobook created, because it's possible to record your own audiobooks now. So there's no reason for the publisher to hold on to those rights if they're not going to create a book.
Yeah, and you can also just do things, and I mean, if you're a writer that's just starting out and wants to like get into that form, I mean, you can just read what you're writing on YouTube, like if you want, just to kind of get like responses and stuff like that, if you're interested in that sort of thing. I mean, audio is a major component, and they get better and better every year in terms of their production. And yeah, so I mean, I love to kind of like toy with that stuff myself. So.
I'm going to begin doing more of that, because over and over again, and I don't understand this, but I keep having people tell me that they love my voice, like when I read.
I love
And
your book.
There you
and and I thought, maybe I should pay attention to this. Maybe if, I have a very simple website, but put out, audio recordings weekly of something that I'm working on, that could. So you have to pay attention to. I'm glad though that you brought that up, Keely, that to be sure that it's in the contract, and if not, you can always do it on your own. I think it's much, much easier now than it used to be, isn't it? Just to do your own recordings and get them out there. Yeah.
And a lot of sites and things will have, you can, if you're doing a weekly blog or post or whatever, you can record it. You can wrap all these things together in your own marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Briefly, how big should an email list be?
It really depends. It's one part of the platform picture. I usually tell people like start at 1,000 and try to build up from there. But I have sold authors with less than 1,000 on the email list, and I have failed to sell authors with more than 10,000. So, there is no magic number. The more, the better.
We have a question here. What are your thoughts about blogging potential bits of the book that you are writing? Again, for anybody.
Yeah, so personally, I don't mind it. I know there's some publishers that don't like having like big chunks, or when someone takes big chunks of their blog or whatever and then puts it into a book. Me personally, I don't mind it, but I do think like the key word there, I think, is bits, right? So
yeah,
if you're sharing like a little bit of like what you're doing, I think that's totally fine. I would just be very, very careful about throwing your whole book onto a blog, or or taking something you've been working on a blog and then trying to put it into book format. That doesn't mean that folks might not be interested in terms of book format, but I just know over the years, sometimes that has come up, and all of this stuff already exists on a blog, and you want to put it into book form, and that can be sometimes problematic. So
yeah.
Are there any benefits or differences between Substack versus the author website email lists? Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
Not
Keely.
really. I think it's kind of what works for you. Those can be the same. I mean, you can be collecting emails in different places. Substack is a really nice platform. It's really user-friendly. It allows you to have like conversations in the comments. You can promote other people's work. So I have found a lot of writers have pretty good success there. If you're sending out a newsletter through your author website, that's fine too. But just being clear on like where you're focusing your energy. If it's Substack, make that your main point of focus. Yeah, I guess Eric, you might have thoughts on this as somebody who puts out newsletters in different capacities. What have you found to be the best?
Well, I have the weekly noticer, and this is through the Jesuit conference, right? So that's something I write, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's like an owned platform, right? It belongs to the Jesuit conference. So I'm writing on behalf of, whereas my Substack is my own kind of thoughts and reflections. Now they're not particularly different. I'm thinking the same thing in both directions, but it's a matter of kind of how directly I can promote a certain project in one platform versus the other. But things can kind of feed each other. And I think, again, part of it comes down to what's your goal? What's your strategy? How are they going to be different? Why are you writing in these different places? And that was something I had to articulate. If you have a focused direction for a book, how do you float the idea into the ether? So risking your intellect. I think this is a question about with the concern being that you might share an idea and then someone else steals it. Is that right, Andre? Without risking your intellectual property. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Okay, I'll speak to that. And I'm going to speak as a believer. Okay, I'm going to speak as a Christian. I don't think good ideas ever just start with one person. I think that the spirit is moving all over the world, and often people in completely different places will come up with the same idea, and I think that's supposed to happen. It's sort of this groundswell of a certain perception or idea. So I don't worry so much about other people writing about the same topic, because I think that's just going to happen, and I think it actually should happen so more people can, benefit from this idea. So if you obsess over other people taking your idea and using it, then you're going to be stressed all the time, and you're going to be worried about, will they get their book published before I publish mine? Well, your book is not going to be the same as their book. I think the point is, you don't want to give, especially in blog posts and just getting feedback on something, you don't want to give away all the stuff, okay? But that whole thing about just putting a bit of it out there, because you're wanting to get feedback from people. You're wanting some help in knowing how to shape what you're writing. But if you truly write what is coming up in you, it's not going to be what somebody else writes. It may be on the same topic, but it's not going to be the same book. But that requires your discipline to be who you are and to write what is really forming in you around this topic. So don't worry so much about, well, this book is appearing in other places. Figure out the specific book that is forming itself within your psyche, within your experience, and don't give away all that stuff for free, because you don't want to tell all the secrets so that people have no reason to read the book when they have the chance.
Yeah, I agree with Vinita wholeheartedly. I mean, for the most part, I've never known anybody, the stuff that I've worked on over the years, where anybody's ever stolen anything from anybody. I just don't see it. I think there are definitely similarities sometimes, but ultimately I've never known anyone to like steal ideas. That being said, I like to think of the metaphor of just like when you're baking a cake, you don't want to keep opening that door and taking it out and poking it all the time. You want to be able to like leave the cake in there for whatever time it needs to be in there for, and allow it to come out when it needs to come out. And so sometimes if you're sharing things a little too early, maybe just, use discernment, pick up, Kevin O'Brien's The Ignatian Adventure, learn about discernment, listen to that voice inside, because you can wreck a really beautiful cake if you keep opening that oven over and over again, and poking at something. So yeah, patience and take your time, I think.
Yeah. When a book is forming, when an idea is forming, you need to protect it.
Yeah.
So that you can do the work on it. And I
Yeah.
love, I'd never thought of the metaphor of the cake, but that's precisely right. You need to wait until the time is right to share anything. So just pay attention to how safe you feel sending part of this to someone to read or putting it out there on a blog, because during the formation, we need to be very careful to protect our space, to protect our own process, and not let it get interfered with by other people's ideas about any other kinds of pressure.
You don't want random people's hands touching your cake. You want to
No, absolutely
right?
not.
I mean, you still want that.
You want
hey,
them to eat the cake at the end, but right
at
now
the
don't.
end. Right. And quickly so it doesn't go stale. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great metaphor or analogy. I don't ever remember the difference. Ali Bobsian has a good question that I'm going to answer. Are there any other questions or classes or workshops you recommend? I would say make sure you're on the Jesuit Media Lab mailing list. Speaking of emails, because we are going to be offering some writing courses. We have a great Catholic storytelling course. Various things that are coming down the pipe in the next several months. So, and if folks have something they would like to see, please get in touch with me, because the great thing about working at the Jesuit Conference is we have a great network of people that we can bring together, like this esteemed panel we have right here. And I want to thank each of you for being here. Thank you, Keely, Gary, Vinita. This has been awesome, a lot of fun. Thanks to all of our participants. And you all have my email. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to be in touch with me. And otherwise, I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Eric. Thank you, guys.